What's going on tonight? Pure Potential members. We're back. Second stream of the day. Had the rookie drafts earlier. Saw a lot of you guys there. Glad you were able to come out and hop into some of those rookie drafts. But we are back for the members show. You already know. We've got a lot of questions here. I'm glad you guys came with the questions because, to be honest with you, I sat down to be like, what should the focus be for this week? And I don't know. I was kind of at a loss. Like, we've kind of looked at the prospects in this class, and now it's like, okay, where are these guys getting drafted? What's the situation going to look like? We don't really need to update our opinions too much, across the board. We don't have to do anything drastic with the prospects at this point. And then it's like, looking at some situations around the league feels kind of pointless because a lot of situations are going to change in just a few weeks. So I don't know. I didn't have like a big sweeping topic, but you guys came with some interesting questions. So we're just going to try to answer those as thoroughly as we can. I see Mike is here. Mike D and Nick is here as well. I saw him earlier on the stream. So happy you guys are here to hang out. Hopefully some more will show up, but we've got a lot of questions. I'll just go in order, I guess. GT had the first one of the day, or first one of this stream, which was how should we value picks in startups? I have the 101, was offered to give up the 101 and my 7th rounder for the 113 and the 202. This was a 14-team, 1 quarterback league, so the 13th pick and the 16th pick for the first pick, but no quarterbacks. There are quarterbacks, but not super flex. So that does change things a little bit. I suggested to GT that he should take this trade back, but I also wanted to talk a little bit more about trading back in startups. I feel like I get this question maybe every month or so, at least once, and it's a tricky topic, so I understand. I think the number one biggest thing to kind of help wrap your head around startup trades is to just try to think about all the assets involved as players. So the easiest way to do that is to look at what overall pick it is, then go to either my rankings or go to startup ADP on Dynasty Data Lab, or you could go to keep trade cut rankings, whatever you want to look at. Match up the overall number pick with the players in those spots. Give yourself a little margin of error. You can envision any player within like a 3 to 6 pick range of that spot, depending on how far into the draft. But just assign the players to those spots and say, okay, will I be happy with this trade if I get a player that's roughly equivalent to this spot and this spot in exchange for this and this? So like in the Jamar Chase example, right, the 13th and 16th player, Jamar Chase, the 101 example, if we assume the 101 in a non-superflex startup is Jamar Chase, who are the 13th and 16th players? Well, we go down the board, Puka, Bijan, JSN, Gibbs, that gets us to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bowers and Neighbors makes 7. Amon-Ra, McBride, Genty is 10. Love makes 11. Lamb, London, Jefferson is 3 more. That's 14. So you're getting basically the equivalent of London and Hampton, or London and McMillan, in exchange for Chase and a 7th round pick. And we don't have to get exact with the 7th round pick, but 7 times 14 in a 14-team startup, that's well after the 80th player overall. So who's, 80th overall player is like Josh Jacobs, but even lower because you're going to push some quarterbacks down. So you're talking like Jamar Chase and RJ Harvey for London and Hampton. I'm going to take that. I'm definitely taking the London Hampton side of that deal. So I genuinely think that's just like the number one thing you need to do if you're trying to understand startup trades, is just put a player there. Just make it a placeholder for an actual player. You can do, you already have to value rookie picks, like 2027 picks, 2028 picks in your regular trades. So you should be able to look at what players are involved in the startup and then layer on top of that the any rookie picks that might be involved. And that's pretty much it. When it comes to specific areas of your startup, I'm definitely wary of trading out of the elite ranges. As long as I'm fine to move around within that range to get as long as I'm still getting an elite asset, or if I'm getting a serious value win. But in a neutral value situation, I don't want to be moving out of an elite range just to get more assets, just to get more, middling assets, above average players as opposed to elite players. What's up, Doc? I got to start saying that to you more often. And Nico just popping in. I guess he's going to see Project Hail Mary. I've heard good things. Let me know how you like it, I guess. You're choosing Ryan Gosling over the member stream. I can't fault you for that, I guess. I will recover. But hopefully that helps with the startup trading. I'm going to move on to Morgan's question. Excuse me. I feel like I have to sneeze. Morgan asked, do you put any labels, early to mid or mid to late, on picks you receive in trades when considering the value based on eye test, fantasy calc, etc., or are you just treating future first as roughly equal? So no, I am definitely estimating the value of future firsts. And what I'm trying to do is not give it the most optimistic projection, but I also don't want to assume the least optimistic. I don't want to look at like a good team's first and say, well, that's the 112. I'm only trading for this pick if it's the 112. What I'm trying to do mentally is I'm trying to find the middle ground between what is like the best I think this pick could realistically be versus, what's the latest I think this pick could be. And I'm going to try to value it somewhere in the middle of that. You can look at teams right now and say that team is not getting the 101. You can probably look at a lot of teams and just say they're not going to be top 3, especially this year. I said it on the stream earlier, like there are going to be a lot of deliberate tanking teams. You can probably see teams in your league that are already trending that direction. So I think you can pretty confidently sort picks into ranges. And I think anybody that doesn't have their 27 first this year is going to have a hard time falling backwards into a top 3 pick. So I think if you're trading for someone's 27 first, you can probably just assume it's going to be like 104 at the earliest, unless this is like a super fragile team that just can't even dig itself out of a hole. So I'm going to look at a pick. I'm going to say, what's the earliest I think this can realistically be? How late can this realistically be? And mainly there, I'm thinking, can this team get a bye? Right? If they can't get a bye, then I've got a good chance of it being, 107, 108. But if it's a really strong team and I'm like, I'm going to weigh in pretty good odds they get a bye, now you're talking about a back 4 pick at best. So I'm estimating the range that it could fall into. Maybe think of it as like a 4 or 5 pick range that you think is most likely. Like this is probably a 105 to 108 type of pick, and then trying to value it kind of in the middle there. But I also want to consider when I'm acquiring a future first that there's going to be value accrual from the point at which I acquire it. So, with all of that being accounted for, you've got a good margin for error where you can still win out on a trade acquiring a first. When it comes to a 28 first, you just want to widen those error bars. If it's a manager that is pretty competent, it's a high value team, you're going to want to weigh that pick more so late than early versus the opposite, which is like a really volatile manager who already has a low value team, already has a lot of older players that are aging out. You want to value that pick and kind of tilt it earlier, but you can't be as confident when it's 2 years out. Yeah, no lies detected here from Sean. Absolutely valid point. And Sean has the next question, actually. Sean said, obviously, almost everything is team dependent. He already knows about my boring cop-out answers, but we'll try to push past those. What is your cutoff between this guy scores points and I need to get out now due to age, scheme, competition, legal issues, etc.? Very good question. And you caught my first answer of, team dependent. But yeah, I mean, the cutoff is going to be different depending on your situation. And I think it depends on like how many of these guys you have, first of all. I think when you load your team up with a bunch of players like this that are all really risky, you're just going for the highest possible projections. I mean, that's what we kind of call that's like an all-in mindset. And that's going to pretty much inevitably lead to a rebuild. Now, I will say, I think there are times where it's actually kind of okay to just embrace an inevitable rebuild. Like sometimes your team is just too far down the tubes. Like you're already 7th in value and you're like, there's just no way, unless I just preemptively tank this season, there's just no way that I'm getting out of this, without a rebuild. And even, I mean, that's a rebuild, right? So I think in those cases, you can actually kind of lean into the volatility. And it's like, okay, this is like a one last ride situation. You're like, things have tilted too far against me. A rebuild is going to come, but this year I have better odds than I probably will after I take a year to rebuild, because I'm going to come out of that with younger players, rookies. Right now, if I actually lean into this a little bit better, I probably have a higher chance of getting a bye week. So I'm actually going to go sort of semi all in, like a planned, it's like a planned all in where you're going to rebuild afterward. And you just know that if the season goes south while you're in the midst of this attempt, that you can hopefully pivot off some of those players early, sell them off week 8, week 9, if you see that it's just not going to happen for you, and you can save yourself some of that value. But otherwise, you can probably just ride it into the ground. More of an average value team, higher value team where you're trying to like keep your window open, that's when I think you want to be more picky with these guys and maybe just say, I'm going to have a couple of these players. I can have Christian McCaffrey, but I'm also going to keep my 27. I'm also going to have my 27 first, my 28 first. I'm going to try to surround him with some rookies. I feel like it's all about like trying to balance. It's like, okay, I've got CMC, but I also have like, 3 second round picks in my back pocket. And it's like, I'm going to lose value from McCaffrey. He's going to decline, but I'm going to get points now. And then those picks are going to kind of appreciate and it's going to level out. So I don't know how helpful that was. It does feel very much like let me see your roster and I'll say like, you need to get off from this guy or you should keep this guy. But yeah, that's kind of how I would generally look at it. I don't want to be, unless I know I'm going into a tank, I don't want to have a ton of guys that make me super nauseous or uneasy. So that's basically the idea. All right. Yeah, CMC isn't going anywhere on a squad that's not completely desolate. Yeah, so like you get you kind of get what I'm saying. Like you're already kind of on that mindset of like, if my team is cooked and I'm not competing regardless, obviously you want to move CMC for the most you can get now. Otherwise, you want to try to utilize whatever league winning seasons he has left, and just accept the downside risk that comes with that. Follow-up question from Jabulani, or I shouldn't say follow-up, just the next question, I guess. How do you approach the dilemma of keeping your roster productive while also preserving value so you remain competitive for several years into the future? For example, when would it make sense to trade away Patrick Mahomes as a contender? So, are we using Patrick Mahomes as an example of like a valuable asset that might not contribute a lot right now? Is that the idea of what is? I'm assuming that's what Mahomes is a stand-in for. You're a contending team, but you have Mahomes. He's going to regain value as he returns to form, but he is maybe a liability on a contending team because he might not be usable early in the season. He might not get back to form fully in 2026. So I'm assuming that's what the idea is with Patrick Mahomes here. And I think the dilemma you're describing is like kind of the essence of Dynasty. It's like, what is your approach? Are you trying to create a sustainable approach where you can remain competitive for years without ever going too far one way or the other? Or is it like other people used to, the older style was like, go all out for 2 or 3 years and then we're going to reset, we're going to do a rebuild, and then we're going to try again. I think with Mahomes specifically, I think it's easy enough to find yourself an early season quarterback or to pivot from Mahomes to somebody like Jackson Dart or Jalen Hurts, where you're not really, I don't think you really have to sacrifice that much value to make a pivot that can help you win this season without really hamstringing yourself later on. But I think in general, this comes down to balance. I think the best way, assuming you haven't already built up some kind of like super high value team, the best way to kind of keep the train rolling is kind of to avoid the assets that are in the middle where they have a lot of value without necessarily being extremely productive. I think the market's gotten a little more efficient with this, but like Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably a good example of a player that still carries a lot more value than his seasonal projection or his seasonal ADP would really justify. And that's because he has upside. But I think you can more efficiently utilize that value if you're splitting that up into, say, like, okay, I've got Mike Evans on my team, and that is my current season production. And Mike Evans is priced in such a way that like his current year projection is like pretty much like 90% of his cost. And then I also have an extra 2028 first. And that 2028 first is going to be value insulation for me. It's going to be value accrual for me. And as Mike Evans like drops off in value, that 28 first is rising in value, and I'm not really losing anything in the trade-off. Whereas with a Marvin Harrison, you're like, in theory, you're paying for an asset with longevity, but in reality, you really need that to go well. You need him to gain value or at least maintain it, or your team is slowly depreciating. So I kind of like, I have teams that are kind of like on the edge between, you know, competing, rebuilding. And I find that those teams often become really split between like, I've got some cornerstone assets that are like young, productive assets. I've got my future first. I'm keeping those. I'm holding on tight to those so that I don't find myself without them later. And then I've also got my like Devontae Adams, David Njoku, David Montgomery, you know, like my kind of gross players that are filling out all the extra positions. And what I don't have is like, I don't roster Garrett Wilson, and I don't roster Jamison Williams, and I don't roster Sam Laporta, and these guys in the middle that are like probably not going to win my league and probably not going to gain massive amounts of value. They're just going to kind of hover, you know, in that middle range and not do a whole lot for me. So I think that's probably the best way to do it, and just ride out an average value contending team for as long as you can. And then, you know, maybe you can take a couple extra swings on third and fourth round rookies, pick up handcuff running backs, find ways to like infuse a little value upside into your team, since you don't have a lot of those more valuable young players. Yellow, what's up, dude? I was just in the middle of a rant, so I couldn't acknowledge you. I appreciate the compliment. Did not realize my hair was on point. I was actually just thinking today that I really need a haircut, but it's kind of worse in the back. I think you can't really tell from the front. We got T Hum here. Recent upgrade back. I think maybe to league winner. I feel like he was a league winner once, but he's purple again. You love to see it. Genuinely, I mean, I love all the members. I'm so grateful to all the members, but like the purple club, I know that I'm not offering the purple team, the purple league winners, anything that would possibly justify that tier of membership. So it's literally just straight from the heart, just the most supportive people. And I just absolutely couldn't be more grateful for the purple squad. So shout out to you guys. The next question was from Rich. Strategies for trading in leagues where members value things way differently. I'm in a boomer league where running back values are overinflated. I need to start somebody, but I'm not trying to trade multiple firsts for Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I mean, this is the micro market versus macro market question. And I think it's part of what makes dynasty value such a suspect concept. I think it's very helpful to talk about in the big picture, but I do think that it needs to be somewhat cast aside in these home league situations. Like if you just exist in an economy that's completely different, I don't think there's anything to be gained from just sort of plugging your ears and saying, well, that's not correct value. That's not how I value these players. Maybe not nothing to be gained, but I think it can be counterproductive if you're too dogmatic about it. So I think what I would say is like, you're going to have to pay a price that you're not comfortable paying, and you just need to find the way to do that you're most comfortable with. So, if you're going to have to pay a premium for running backs, no matter what, find a way to pay the lowest premium you can for the running backs that you like the most. So for me, one thing that I find is like, and this might not be the case in your league, but I find in these leagues that maybe overvalue a certain position is that they're not doing it proportionally. And so they're actually pushing up the middle class of this position closer to the upper class. And it actually can make more sense to just go right after the high end guys, because you're not actually, like, proportionally speaking, you're getting a discount on those higher end players in your league economy. Like you said, Josh Jacobs 2 firsts, right? Like, how much more than 2 firsts would it cost to get Jonathan Taylor, right? Because you might find that those prices are just like closer together than they should be, because people are just pushing up all the running backs, but they're not pushing the high end running backs up at the same rate. So it's like, can we just go all the way to that guy? Another thing I would do in that particular situation is I would be trying to get a lot of later round rookie picks. So I would want late seconds, thirds, fourths, and I would just want to be stacking my bench with contingent running backs, right? Because even in this league context, I kind of doubt that you're not going to see like the late, like, flyer running backs getting pushed way up the draft board. They might get pushed up a little bit in the rookie drafts. They're not necessarily going to get pushed up proportional to the league economy. And so you might actually be getting a discount by just drafting as many rookie running backs as you can and sort of controlling the market that way. And maybe, prioritizing that over other positions in the rookie draft, because that you can go out of your way and you can go get wide receivers and tight ends cheaper. Or if you do hit on a running back, that you can sell that guy or any excess running backs you might have for a profit. So just find a way to turn it against them. Use the market principles that you do have at your advantage, and then try to kind of turn it back around on them. 19 months, dude. It's crazy. We've been doing this for so long at this point. Absolutely love it. All right. So that's my thought. I feel like I don't have any leagues that are that crazy far off the market. I did make a trade today that I posted in the Discord, two firsts, 107 and 108 for Kenneth Walker in a half PPR non-tight end premium league. I'd say that league is a little all over the place as far as market value, but I don't know if it's like consistently one position. It's just like a lot of managers that are not really up to the consensus, or like don't really pay attention to the market. And so things are all over the place. The manager I traded with also made a trade where he sent Josh Jacobs plus for JCM. So he just kind of has his own values. Like, I don't know exactly what he's doing, but yeah, if there's ever a league I overpay for running backs, it's that one, because it is half PPR. It is non-tight end premium, so the running backs really get pushed up. I see T-Hum needed some directions from Nico to get to the stream. Yeah, if anybody that's watching right now, keep spreading the good word about where the stream links are, because people seem to be confused. I did post it on YouTube. I posted it in the Discord and I pinned it, but I understand that it is a little different from the previous system, so I suspect it'll take a little while for people to get used to. So just help people out. I'll try to be as clear as I can about where the links are from moving forward. Domain Guys had a video talking about the importance of receiving yards per game in analyzing hit rates for rookie backs. Did you see that? So I didn't. I think I saw a video last year that they did that was similar. I thought it was yards per reception, but I could totally be wrong on that. Either way, I know that they had some sort of like miracle metric that they were using to like find rookie running backs to target. In one sense, any kind of like receiving metric, I could totally see how that would have correlation, because we're not just trying to solve for which running backs is the NFL going to value, but which running backs are going to provide value that is fantasy friendly. And if you have a running back that's an efficient receiver, it means that they're more likely to be used that way in the NFL, most likely. It means that they are going to be effective at it when they're used in that role. So it's probably just catching some sort of like latent signal from something we should kind of intuitively be looking for. I know that JJ Zacharyason's model basically only uses receiving inputs for running backs. And his argument for that is that draft capital is already capturing a lot of what we're looking for at running back. Like, you could pretty much just draft running backs off of draft capital and you would do very, very well. But if you wanted to elevate your success rate above draft capital, you want to try to solve for the thing that the NFL is not necessarily solving for. When they draft a running back high, they're not necessarily looking for specifically receiving usage, but we in fantasy football should be looking for receiving usage in these running backs. And so by solving for, okay, these two running backs got drafted highly, but which one of them is more likely to be used as a receiver, you're probably going to have a better hit rate doing that. And that's like the simpler version. So I think it's probably something similar that they're doing. And I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious to know who the two running backs are. I think I saw Jadarian Price on the thumbnail, which is super weird because Jadarian Price's receiving profile sucks, but maybe he has a high yards per reception and just like a really low yards per route run and yards per game and reception share. But maybe his receiving yards or his yards per reception could be good, I guess. But like, I wouldn't look at Jadarian Price and say that's a receiving back. Like, he does not have the experience there. Coleman for sure. Like, Coleman makes a lot of sense. He has a good receiving profile. I'm surprised Emmett Johnson didn't pop for the receiving stuff. Again, I don't know what his efficiency was, but volume wise, he was very much used as a receiver. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, good stuff. Nico is back this week with another one of his difficult questions. While he watches Project Hail Mary, I have to figure out which tight ends are going to break out this year. He says, which tight end scores 16 points per game in a half-point tight end premium? A rating of 1 being no shot, a rating of 10 being 100% chance. So rate these guys on a scale of 1 to 10 on their odds of scoring 16 points per game in a full PPR half-point tight end premium. Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin, Aronde Gadsden, Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta. Well, first of all, I need a baseline. So I'm going to pull up one of my leagues that is half-point tight end premium so I can actually look at who the high scorers were and how many people even got to that mark. Let me just check real quick. We're going to go stats, season average, and we're going to go tight end. So at tight end, we had McBride at 22.3, Kittle at 17.3. That's quite a drop. Bowers at 17.3, Tucker Kraft at 16.6. 4 tight ends last year cracked 16 points per game. So between the 5 guys that he listed, Warren, Fannin, Gadsden, Kraft, Laporta, I mean, I would not project any of them for a median outcome of 16 points per game. Kyle Pitts was at 15, Dallas Goedert at 14.3, Laporta at 14.3. I mean, I think that is definitely more reasonable in the 14 to 15 range as opposed to 16. But if we start with Warren, yeah, I mean, if I was going to rate this, it feels like the rating of 1 to 10 is like just in 10% increments. So that would mean all these guys would be under 5 for me, or like 5 at best. Because I wouldn't project this to happen. I wouldn't say it's a likelihood. So for Warren, I'd probably give him close to the best odds, and I would say like 4.5. I'd probably say that for Warren and for Fannin. I'd give them like a 4.5. Maybe like a 4 for Fannin, just because the offense has like some major question marks. And then I think for Gadsden, I'd be farther down. I'd be way further down. Like, I'd give Gadsden like a 2 on scoring 16 points per game. I'd give Laporta like a 2.5. I think Laporta and Gadsden are like pretty similar likelihoods to hit that type of ceiling. I think the difference in value is just like Laporta just has a higher floor, but I wouldn't necessarily say he has a likelihood of hitting this high ceiling. Kraft is going to be a matter of health, but honestly, I'm not that big of a Kraft guy. I think he's a really good real life tight end because I think he's one of the better all around guys, but he's never been a good target earner. He's never been a high, like last year he was on this hot streak, but he was so far above expectation. It was all just yak plays. And I want to believe in the yak plays, but that's the last thing you should have a lot of faith in for a guy coming off an ACL plus MCL. So I don't know. I really struggle with Kraft. I was thinking about making him a sell. I'd probably give him like a 3. I'll give him a 3, I guess. That'll be my final answer. Gadsden 2, Laporta 2.5, Tucker Kraft 3, Fannin 4, Warren 4.5 out of 10. Loveland for me would be like a 7. I mean, I think he has a good chance to hit that mark of 16 points per game, and I would say I think he's more likely than not to hit it. I think he's got good odds to do it. Yeah, I think he left out Loveland on purpose. I think there was a follow-up about that. Like, why didn't you put Loveland? He was like, yeah, he's just a lock. I think Loveland is very likely to hit that number. Like I said, 7 out of 10. But yeah, Kittle. I think Kittle is absolutely the mold you're looking at with Kraft, where he's not going to be the biggest target earner, but he's going to make big plays, yards after the catch. I just don't know if I don't think he's quite on that level with Kittle. It's like people want him to be Kittle, but I feel like no one is Kittle other than Kittle. Like every other tight end is so volume dependent, and I just don't know if Kraft can actually pull that off. All right, Morgan came back here with another question. He said, do you think it's particularly good or bad to invest in and be overexposed to an entire receiving room? I'm imagining buying Loveland, Burden, and Adunze all at their prices. So like 3 picks between 3rd and 6th round. If 2 are huge hits and 1 is clearly behind, you could be left with 2 top 24s and a 9th rounder, which doesn't seem terrible. I think it's a plus EV move, but I have no numbers to back myself up. Yeah, I mean, I don't have numbers either. What I do know is it's very difficult for 3 players in the same offense, at least 3 pass catchers, I should say, in the same offense to really be big hits. And so they're going to be somewhat negatively correlated with each other, but that doesn't mean it can't work out. Like your absolute ceiling is going to be higher if you're picking guys from 3 different offenses. Like that's just naturally going to be the case. What you're doing is you're making a correlated bet on the offense. So you're kind of like lifting your floor, but you're lowering your ceiling by doing that. I think it can be fine in Dynasty because you don't need to hit like a perfect outcome. You don't need to hit like a 99th percentile outcome to win in Dynasty. And so you can find a team, if you can hit on the right offense that's going to ascend and make that leap, it can absolutely work out to just have a bunch of pieces. And I think it's the right kind of offense to make that bet on. It almost feels like you just want to bet on Caleb in that sense. But yeah, I mean, you can see where I have anybody that's in the 2nd or 3rd tier can see where I have these guys ranked. If those 3 guys come up in my startup and they're all the best guys on the board, I'm totally fine to take them all. I have Loveland at 22nd overall. So late second in a half point tight end premium. I have Burden at 40th, early 4th round pick. And then I have Rome at 55. So late 5th. So would I spend a 2nd, 4th, and 5th on the Bears offense? I guess I would. Again, it's going to lower your ceiling, but you're probably going to have at least one really big hit out of that group, and you could absolutely get a second good and useful player there. I don't know how many other offenses I would really be willing to do that with, but I also don't know how many other offenses have that many high value players in them. Like, it's kind of a unique situation because they're all young. We saw this with the Lions last year, I guess it was last year, and I was fading Laporta a little bit. I thought Laporta was too high. I thought Jameson Williams was also a little too high, so I guess it's not a good example. But people were betting on Amon-Ra, Laporta, and JMO, and they got another great season out of Amon-Ra, and they got a decent points per game season out of Laporta before he got hurt, and they got a fine kind of value stable season out of JMO. Like, he didn't lose value. He didn't win your league. But yeah, it can work out as long as you're hitting one of these really, really high powered offenses. All right. You guys have so many questions. Holy cow. Jabulani says, I have too much value at quarterback in one of my leagues. I have May, Daniels, Mahomes, and Shuck, 12 by 10 Superflex, non-tight end premium. Don't have any 2026 picks, but my only need is tight end. Yeah, I mean, this is just like an embarrassment of riches. Like, you say you have too much value at quarterback, but you also have Bijan, Hampton, Hall, Tootin, JSN, Puka, London, Rice, Downs, Hawk, Andrews, Schultz. Yeah, I mean, like, you're really just flexing your roster on us. If you have all your 27 and 28 picks too with this team, like, you're just in a good spot. I mean, yeah, I would shop the quarterbacks. I think Mahomes would be my preferred guy to move there, and I'd probably be looking to move laterally to somebody like Loveland, tier up from Mahomes to a McBride or Bowers, maybe tier down from Mahomes to like a Tyler Warren plus. It is a non-tight end premium though, so I'd want a decent plus to make that swap. But you have such a high value team, you could afford to sell one of these quarterbacks for a little bit less than they're worth just to lock in another upgrade in your starting lineup. Like, that's kind of the spot your team is in. You don't need to be penny pinching over every bit of value. You just want to be optimizing yourself to get a buy. So I would like to keep May and Daniels if possible. I think that's a really good combo. I would like to obviously keep your other star players and just try to upgrade the flex, upgrade the tight end. So, what does Mahomes plus, I don't know, what does Mahomes plus Rice get you, right? Does that get you Bowers and some other quarterback in return as a way of like down tiering from Mahomes? I think you can get creative with that, but the overall picture is like you're not really in any trouble here. Maverick the Hulk, as a commissioner, how do you manage managers that are barely active? The ones that don't respond to messages, never make moves or trades, but set their lineups. I'm not a great person to ask because I honestly am a terrible commissioner. I feel bad. I just suck at it. I'm just not locked in enough for it, and I don't care enough for it. I think it's because I'm in too many leagues. But in theory, as a commissioner, what I've seen people do, or what I wish I was more active in doing, is like reaching out to those managers and saying, hey, like, the goal of this league is managers that are active. Obviously you're paid up for this year, so you can run your team how you want. But if you don't think you can be active and respond to trade offers in a timely manner, we will probably look for a replacement manager, like something like that. I think it's fine to set a baseline expectation of what you expect from people. Like, respond to trade offers within a week, or like, don't ignore people's DMs. Like, but as long as they're setting their lineups and they're following what the bylaws say, you do definitely have to give some grace, and you have to like give them a heads up and give them some warning before you do anything drastic, obviously, because they are within their rights, even if it's annoying. All right, let's see here. Kid Carson, what are your thoughts on tanking during the startup draft, specifically for this year? A lot of startups I'm in, someone instantly starts selling for picks to guarantee Jeremiah Smith. What would you counter to this? Yeah, I mean, I just think if you're going to tank this year, you really need to commit to it. And like you said, there's often somebody that's already looking to tank. And I also think you're going to see more so this year than other years. You're going to see managers throughout the summer, early into the season, just kind of give up prematurely, because it's not just Jeremiah Smith. Like the top end of this 27 class is very highly regarded. I don't think people are going to be as worried like, oh, I'm not going to get the 101, so I can't tank. I think people are just going to tank. And I think they're going to do it a lot. So I think this is probably the best year to compete. Obviously not if you don't have the pieces to do it. In that case, you want to probably get ahead of the tanking. I think this is a half form take, because I'm kind of forming it as I'm speaking, but I think this is probably a year where you want to have fewer teams that are like on the fence going into the year. And instead, especially if you have a lot of teams, you probably want to decide earlier than you normally would like, this is a tanking team. I'm going to really optimize this to get the 101. And this is not a tanking team, and I'm really going to take advantage of other teams that want to tank, and I'm going to try to get myself a buy. Because like Jeremiah Smith could genuinely be it probably will be a first round startup pick next year. So the difference between getting him and getting like the 104 or the 105 is going to probably be bigger than it's been most other years that you can think of. And I think there's just so much like hype swirling that people are going to really want to get in on it, and they're really going to want to have these early picks. So I would say we need to decide a little earlier this year. But yeah, in a startup draft, I'm probably not going to be the guy that just sells out and tanks right from the start unless I'm getting a really good offer to do so. If someone's offering me a 27 first to move down from like the 103 to the 203, then yeah, I'm probably going to take that. And maybe that's the signal that I'm going to just stack up assets and productive struggle. But for the most part, I like trying to win. And I think if you have multiple managers doing that, I think you can just try to win and don't worry too much about the whole 2027 thing. I wouldn't just say go all in either. I like to keep my 27 first, but I have noticed there are certain managers and startups that are willing to go, they're willing to trade way, 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 way down just to get a 27 first. Like I think I moved from this late 6th up to the 201 or the 112 or something for just a 27 first. Like if you're doing that, then if someone's giving you that type of deal, then yeah, take advantage, sell your 27 first and take the big value in and get another elite asset. Jimbo, is it bad that I have 60+% Shador, Scadaboo, and Loveland exposure, or is it smart and calculated and I'm a good dynasty manager? Anybody that knows Jimbo knows this is partially a troll question. But yeah, I mean, having 60% Loveland absolutely rocks. Having 60% Scadaboo sounds extremely terrifying to me, but it could work out for you. Having 60% Shador is pretty tough scene. Hopefully that helps. Phil, what do I do if I leave a startup with loads of good values on firsts? Do I sell those picks? And what do I do if nobody wants them / pays a fair price? Well, I think the last part of that question probably doesn't need to be asked. What do you do if nobody wants them? I mean, I think the only thing you can do is pick with them, unless I'm missing something. Do you sell the picks? You definitely shop the picks. Like, there's no reason to sit on rookie picks and not make them available, not see what people are going to offer for them. So yeah, you absolutely try to sell the picks just to see what you can get. Now, the 101 and the 104, I think this year you should be very happy to pick players there. The 106, probably Kenyon Sadiq. That's much more like, in the right situation. I drafted a Kenyon Sadiq in a pre-draft rookie draft because I sent out some offers. Nobody was biting. It was a 1.0 tight end premium league, to be fair. I think he's a pretty good value there in that format. 108, 111, I don't feel as confident in making those picks. 8 could be a first round wide receiver now that KC and Omar Cooper are both looking like first rounders. You could do a lot worse. 111 is probably going to be one of my least favorite spots on the whole board. Doesn't mean you got a bad value, and it doesn't mean it's the end of the world if you pick a player there, but you can try to get creative. You can try to trade back from the 111 and see if you can pick up some extra picks, move back to the early second. You could try packaging 108 and 111 together to get a higher end player or to move up in the draft. Can you get another top 5 pick? The 102, 103 for those 2 firsts. You can try to add one of those firsts on top of another player that you drafted to get an upgrade. You could try moving the 108 straight up for a 2028 first round pick. So I think there's a lot of ways to move the picks, but if you feel that you got good values on them, you shouldn't feel bad about having to draft a rookie there because you probably would prefer that rookie to the veterans you passed over anyway. Mission Aviat, when do you draw the line to stop up tiering even if the value is on your side? Never, pretty much. If you are getting to a point where you quite literally can't field a lineup, then I guess you would stop there. But otherwise, tiering up and the value is on your side, that is an automatic accept. Yes, I'm getting the best player in the deal and I get a value win. That is quite literally the goal of every single Dynasty trade. So I would say don't look a gift horse in the mouth. The nice thing about tiering up is you can pretty much always tier back down, especially if you're getting a value win on the way up. You have pretty much no loss. You can probably flip those assets for a profit if you need to. So yeah, just keep taking the trades. Just keep taking them, keep cheering up. Studs and duds is a totally viable strategy. It can absolutely work for you. All right. Gabe, league winner. He says, how you value different league sizes and settings. How far do wide receivers / pass catching running backs drop in half PPR? How does non-tight end premium compare to half or more? 6-point passing touchdowns. His other question is about having the best roster. Do you tier down from assets? I feel like I kind of talked about that earlier in the stream. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that one. The different league sizes and settings. Half PPR, the main difference is that the wide receiver 3 types and below lose a ton. They have almost no value because you're really never trying to flex those guys. You have your 2 or your 3 wide receiver spots, and you just don't want wide receivers in your flex because the running backs are going to outpace them. There's just not enough volume for those guys, not enough yardage for those guys. So that's the main difference. It definitely pushes up the running backs in the mid-range, makes them more valuable. Tight end premium pretty much drops everybody. The simplest way to look at it is everybody drops a tier, but at a certain point, guys basically the non-elite guys are just kind of cooked. If you don't have a pathway to being an elite tight end in non-tight end premium, I just want nothing to do with you. So get out of here. Dalton Kincaid. I'm pretty indifferent to even a Sam Laporta in a non-tight end premium format because I just don't think he has a realistic path to that really high ceiling. So that would be another consideration there. I think you pretty much get to that tier and you're just kind of, I'd rather just punt. I'd rather just have Dallas Goedert. I'd rather have Hunter Henry. I'd rather have Juwan Johnson than pay up for these mid-range tight ends. I think that's a huge difference. And it also makes it way less viable to flex tight ends. So like in tight end premium, I'll have as many elite tight ends as someone lets me have. I don't really want to roster Bowers and McBride in a non-tight end premium league because they're probably valued by the market high enough that I'd be better off pivoting to another wide receiver or running back that's going to score more points than having both of those guys. So I only want one elite tight end in a non-tight end premium format, if any. I'm very willing to punt the position. I don't want to live in that middle ground. 6-point passing touchdowns doesn't really change much between quarterbacks and quarterbacks like within the quarterback position. It's just not going to be enough of a difference to really matter that much. A little bit of a boost, I guess, to the Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott of the world. But the biggest difference is the gap between the quarterbacks and the skill positions in 6-point passing touchdowns. They're just going to score more raw points relative to running backs and wide receivers. That makes the elite guys more appealing because they're just, if you want to maximize your raw scoring output, having an Allen, having a Lamar, whatever, is just going to give you a higher ceiling overall. And it's just more important, I think, to have two good quarterbacks in that format. I don't think pass catching running backs take too much of a hit, at least not the elite ones. I guess it makes guys like flex worthy guys that usually are pass catching backs. You think of like a Rashad White or like a late career Austin Eckler. Those guys are less appealing, but I don't think it changes too much for the running backs because they just mostly aren't getting enough passing volume for it to affect them as much as the wide receivers. All right, I know T-Hum is here, and he asked the question, how much do you determine how much more value you should put into your contending teams before the percentage chance to win becomes a diminishing return? As in, when should you keep your future value things that you are probably trading away? That's a great question. I don't know if I have like a threshold, but that is like such a key question to have in mind when you are making contending trades. You're looking at your team, saying, how much does this really move the needle for me now versus how much value am I going to lose later? I mean, I think the number one thing you can do for your team is get the bye. So one thing you shouldn't be doing, for example, is if you already feel like you have a very good chance to get the bye, you don't really need to be pouring any more value into your team at that point. I think you should be comfortable to just get the bye and then just kind of see where things go from there. You can shop around and see if you can get trades that are kind of value neutral that improve your team or like you don't think are going to be a big loss, but you don't want to go out of your way and like make a deal that you know is going to kill your value later that you don't really need to make because you already are getting the bye. Like once you're getting the bye, there's only so much more you can do to help your odds in those two playoff matchups. So I think that's the big difference. I've even heard Jacob Sanderson say that he's been a seller at the trade deadline if he has a bye locked up. Like if he's a front running team that's going to get the 1 or the 2 seed, he'll actually trade away one of his big time producers to get a return and like save a bunch of value on the front end. That's an extreme strategy. And I mean, I commend him for having the discipline to do that. I don't know if I could go that far, but I can certainly like look in the mirror and say like, I don't need to make this trade. I just need to like let variance do its thing. So I think that's the biggest difference is how much can it affect your buy chances. 2 more questions. We're really just about to hit an hour. So this was perfect. You guys gave me just the right number of questions here. Eric has a 12 team start 8 half PPR league. That's kind of yucky to me, Eric, but that's okay. Smaller lineup league, half PPR makes this an easy trade question for me. He says, are you taking Dart or Stafford, Adams, and Brian Thomas? I would be taking Dart here. In a start 8 format, it's all about the elite producers and the guys that can reach that kind of cornerstone status. You're getting so much upside with Dart. Adams is fine and Brian Thomas is fine, but like, in a half PPR league where you only start 8 guys, you probably have 2 wide receiver spots and a flex. I don't really care about those guys that much. I think they're way, way, way easier to replace. and the upside that you can get with Dart as a rusher, it just far outpaces the 3 assets there. So give me the best asset in the deal. I think it's a value in. I think it's a tier up for you. I think you get a scarce asset with him. Easy trade. All right, last question. Haven't seen a question before from Tell 'em Bring Me My Money 11. So we love to see some new names here in the chat. More and more people actually discovering where the member streams have been hiding these last few weeks. He says, realistically, who is this year's perfect third quarterback on a Superflex roster? Good for depth, but if he was any more valuable, you'd look to sell to upgrade other positions. This is a good question. The perfect third quarterback. Because as we know, when you're holding a ton of value at quarterback, it's just kind of inefficient because, you know, one quarterback is on the bench. You're pretty much never playing that guy unless one of your top 2 quarterbacks gets hurt or is on a bye. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to store a ton of value in a third quarterback unless you have that luxury. Rich said Bryce Young because there's always a sucker who will trade for him after his one random good game per month. I mean, it's a funny answer. Depending on your league, Bryce Young can be devalued to a point where I'm totally fine to draft him as a third quarterback. I actually drafted my first Bryce Young share in ages in a 14-team Superflex startup that I was in recently. But yeah, I would say Bryce is in that territory. I would say Daniel Jones is in that territory. I mean, Stafford varies from league to league. I've seen him move for like just a 27-second. If you're getting Stafford from someone who's like afraid he's going to hurt his back or retire or something, he can be a viable third quarterback. But then it really drops off after Bryce and Daniel Jones to the point that I don't think you can be comfortable necessarily with any of these guys because it gets to Penix and McCarthy, Geno, but I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay having a team that doesn't have the third quarterback totally figured out. Like I did a startup. Let me see if I can find which team it was. I did a startup in January where I took Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, and then my other quarterbacks. Come on. Load, please. I have May and Mahomes. My other quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, Gardner Minshew, and Spencer Rattler. So I don't have a third starting quarterback right now. Now, I thought Kirk Cousins had a good chance to get a gig. Deshaun Watson, you know, has a chance to start games. Gardner Minshew might start games this year. He's backing up Jacoby Brissett. Carson Wentz is back with the Vikings. He's probably not going to start games this year, but I'm kind of fine because I have 2 quarterbacks that are high-end value. I don't really care that much, and quarterbacks always pop up. You know, they always pop up. There's always guys you can pick up like a Mariota, Brissett that are going to show up this year. So I think the answer for the cheapest quarterback 3 is probably like Brissett or Geno. But if you want to feel really comfortable about that third quarterback, it's probably Jones or Bryce because like they're going to start all year, you know, unless something happens to them. All right. That was a good stream. I think it was a productive stream. You guys asked good questions, and I appreciate that. It makes my life a little bit easier when I can just think about the answers and not think so much about what questions need to be asked right now. Hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. I will be around in the Discord. You know where to find me. I'll be back with another video next week. And, Mike's got a last minute question here. Putting aside off-field issues, has Watson likely dropped so far in skills that he is ranked below Shedeur? I mean, he's ranked below in Dynasty just because I don't think either of these guys is likely to be a long-term starter, but like I've seen enough bad play from Watson at this point to say like that's just probably not going to happen. Whereas Shedeur, at least he's a year 2 quarterback where it's kind of like, you know, anything can happen. So that's why he's ranked below him. I have no idea how the Browns view these 2 guys. Like I don't think it's a given that Shedeur is starting over Watson in week 1. I don't know if it's a given that either of these guys is starting at this point. They could still pick up Cousins and just play him. So, you know, It seems like Watson had completely fallen off. He definitely wasn't good the last couple years that he played, but it was hard, you know, with the bad team, with the off-field stuff, with the injuries. Like, I just don't know. You know, it was a very weird fall from grace. So it's a strange situation. It's a gross situation, but probably a guy that should be rostered, you know, in Superflex leagues. I guess I should throw him into the dart throws. All right. That's that, guys. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.